did you not go insane during COVID?
I actually shockingly had a semi-fun time too. I mean, the horrible divorce was going on, but I got this Airbnb downtown Santa Barbara, ended up with a Manchester girl who was going through a divorce also, and we had just met kind of recently. And she moved in with me. We lived like the young golden girls in this Airbnb. We were the first out there to get curbside cocktails. We would, if anything opened up, we were there. We were just the wild girls. We'd have dance parties by ourselves in our place. We we had a great time. It was like having a roommate that I'd never had, and we had a ball. And I was creative. I wrote screenplays during that time, and I went to Africa during that time for 6 weeks.
DIVORCEPARTY.
Welcome to Divorce Party. I'm Monica Casey here with Tom Arnold. Our guest today became a divorcee during the pandemic. She decided to put her life in a storage unit since she was an empty nester and travel the world. She's also an LA and UK based writer and producer. Her company is called Highway 101 Entertainment. And while she was in Jamaica last year, she decided to start a blog. Please welcome to the show, Kim of Second Chapter Nomad. Hey, Kim.
Hello, hello.
So, Tom, this is my friend Kim.
Yes, hi, Kim.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Kim,
meet you too.
Kim and I met in about 2016. She was a producer of a film I was in with Molly Shannon and Paul Reiser, and we met at the Seattle Film Festival.
Yep. Yeah. It was the world premiere there. We were all there. Yes. And you'll see that that goes into my timeline of this whole divorce thing. 2016 was a key.
And I'm sure within 5 minutes of meeting each other, we were like, we're both getting a divorce. Our lives are shit.
Literally remember at the hotel lobby having a drink or two. And you and I, like, it was like, whoop, immediate. Because it was very, very, very fresh for me at that moment. Like really fresh.
Well, it's sure good you're here today. Yeah, it's yesterday, and I told Monica, I got served papers for the.
Yeah, what is this, the 57th time?
No, I would
Oh,
say
no.
for sure, maybe 15, 16, 17. It's a long 7-year thing. And it's what I've learned by doing this podcast is speaking to attorneys and judges and people, therapists. There's a specific name. Until we started doing this podcast, I thought, oh, it's a high conflict divorce custody thing. But it turns out if only one person is doing all this stuff, if only one person calls the police all the time, if one person is filing really frivolous bullshit, then that's not what it is. It's a legal abuse. So this has been very helpful for me, selfishly. Love hearing people's stories, but also going, no, wait a minute, is that what I'm dealing with here? Well, I'll write that down for the next time. And as I've said to Monica, there was going to be a next time. It just happened to be yesterday, but it's all good. It's all good.
No, that's definitely part of my story, but we'll get into all that. But those
Go.
papers, no, but the papers coming in and stuff, that is a part of it. It's grueling and unbearable.
Yeah, I loved last night when we were talking though, Tom, you were like, it's not upsetting me or like stressing me out or triggering me like it normally would,
Yeah.
which is so great. You just get to a point where you're not as affected by it and, you're just kind of like, ugh, it's the other person's problem.
Well, yeah, you do have to read it and then go try to figure out what it is. What are the charges? What are the contempt charges? And put that together with the other charges that the judge. I mean, it's been thrown out of court, and the police have always taken her out. And I'm undefeated, but it's expensive, it's unusual, and you sit there and go, what is what is going on with this person? But I have no control of that. But this one I was a little more analytical. I just went through Exhibit A, Exhibit B. Monica's in there.
I made it.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, and in this case, and I'll quit talking about my bullshit. But as I'm reading, there's correspondence we do with OFW, Our Family Wizard. That's how the judges always The judge is trying to make it so there's no contact at all, which is the way it should be. But the stuff, and I've always felt like I try to be careful on there, like very specific. This is what I want to do, or this is the schedule, or this
Everything can
is
be read back in court. So
yeah,
everything is
yeah.
documented.
So,
Mhm.
and then one judge has said to me, "Don't put anything in writing. You don't want your kids to read back to you in public in later years." So, I uh, I have done that. I think a pretty good job. You know, it's hard when you read ridiculous things. But what she's done is actually like there's stuff that she put in this. If I were her, I would never in a million years put that. I don't know how that does anything except make her look uh, way out there. So, you know, I think it's just my alimony. I stopped paying alimony on March 1st. I knew she was going to come up with something. I knew there would be, you know, like any other time we got to court for to settle something. The week before she starts. You know, she'll say, "I'm going to call the police." Okay, no, please. Don't. Okay, I'm going to file a restraining order. Okay, and the judges are always like, "This is garbage. You and your lawyer better never do this again here. Better never come across this desk." And then they'll do it again until that lawyer quits. But I think what I you know I did stay up late last night going through a few things and pulling my OFWs down just to kind of remind myself and just be prepared in that way. But I think I'm just going to go into court and say, uh, here's the thing. I would explain that only one person has filed all of this stuff for 7 years. Negative shit about the kids, negative. Called the police. Only one person's been taken out of the house by police. I have never filed anything except for divorce, which I think for divorce. And I think that this is, I could go into all the details. I'll tell the judge, but this is legal abuse. There's no doubt about it. And we just got to change our agreement where there's no consultation, where any decision will be mine and with the kids, because anytime there's something in the air or like mutual approval, I never get approved. I never stop her from doing stuff. So hopefully, knock on wood, but you never know. We get a judge that's in a bad mood, and but I'm going to really work on not doing the he said, she said. Here's responses to what she said that shows her doing this stuff. I just want to keep it very simple this time, and hopefully it'll work.
Wow, how old are your kids?
Quinn, who is homesick today, she's 8. Jax is 10. So they've experienced.
Oh, you're in the thick of it then with them, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've seen the cops. They've seen been a part of their life. All this stuff. You know, they never seen their mother and I together. Uh, um,
Yeah.
which you know, I eventually had to tell Quinn. How did I get here? She would say, how did I? Because Disney characters have a prince and princess, and so I did this thing because I'm full of grace, where I created this animation of her mom over here up in the sky and me over here, and we
Oh,
float so far apart, nothing in common except you. We love
oh,
you. Wanted to get you down here, and you know, and so that's what you. But they don't. It's not a situation where like, I wish you and mom were back together. They don't. They don't.
yeah.
You know, for my sake, they don't. So, you know, you do that. Now, tell me about your hilarious divorce.
Well, it's a long one, and I made different choices than you did, partly because even hearing what you're saying, just remembering getting emails of new divorce documents, even now that just like literally sends,
It does.
ugh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so triggering. And I would get those emails and I couldn't open them. I would like just put them away, and it was horrible. So anyway, I'll get to that later of why I am where I am now. But yeah, it was 2016, Monica, the year I met you, that the beginning happened, and I won't get into details, but it was a shocking turn of events when I found out my husband at the time had somebody else. That's
Mhm.
all I'll say about that. And my kids were 17 and 19, so very different. It's,
Oh,
sometimes I'm blessed because I never had to go through child custody or anything like that. But there's totally different issues when you're dealing with, obviously, your kids that are dealing with going off to college and have had this lovely traditional upbringing, and suddenly their world's totally rocked too. So it was, and to this day, that was 2016. And here we are, gosh, almost 8 years later. And it's still, it's, holidays, it's everything. It's really, it's something that changed forever.
Yeah, and you're deep into this. How long were you married?
Oh my God. So we met at 21 and,
Oh, wow.
dated and got married at 26. And technically it was somewhere in the 25-year mark, but
Yeah,
I stopped it in my head at 2016, but we didn't finalize till 2020.
yeah.
So we were not legally separated, but separated, living under the same roof for 3 years. And I look back at
Oh,
that
I've
going,
oh, yeah.
absolute hell for
Oh, yeah.
both of us, for him as well.
Yeah.
But I was, mostly a stay-at-home.
I hope it was hell for him. Now, I tried that for, I think, about 3 to 6 months. It was
Yep.
awful. Tell me your experience living under the same roof. You haven't filed, you're done.
Yep.
And what was that experience like? Can you
I
describe
mean, is
it?
it Eggshell City?
Oh,
Eggshell City, but there were so many factors. We had a lovely home, nice family home of 20 years and spacious. I will point that out. So there was always another room. We
yeah.
never shared a room again. And my son was away at Boulder at college. So I was just entering empty nest. My daughter, it was her senior year of high school. So you can imagine, once you get to that I just raised the kids. I was just,
Right, right.
and I was working really hard on college applications and college visits with my daughter. And we were really, and it was going to be prom and graduation and all that stuff. And then just literally explosion. And I personally could not deal with the situation. So I thought he was going to leave, but he didn't. And that was the
Oh,
catcher. And I wasn't going to leave. I had nowhere to go. And financially, it's an absolute,
Well, and especially I feel like in California, they say whoever leaves, you're out. You're
yes,
basically
yes.
forfeiting the house to the other person.
Totally. So it turned into 3 years, and I just focused on getting my daughter, she went to USC Film School, dealt with that, dealt with my son who was going through a lot, and then he ended up transferring to Ireland. In hindsight, no wonder he ran halfway across the world to get away from all this. But and then my ex now, he worked out of state, so for our whole marriage. So I was used to independence, and so he was gone a lot more, and when he was home, I'd leave. So we just were, two ships passing in the night, but 3 years.
all right. Let me get my head around this. Now, the perfect family on paper, everything is great. And what was the explosion? Take me back to that moment where shit, and tell me about what that felt like.
Oh, well, it was horrendous. I mean, obviously, again, in hindsight, I mean, we were clearly growing apart, as I think is extremely common with the emptiness coming and having been together since we were so young. Obviously, you cut to practically 30 years later, we're becoming different people, going different directions. So I can see that. But I still didn't see this, coming at all. I thought I had the traditional, rest of my life, kids off to college, off we go. Yeah, so anyway, it was a massive explosion, found out in a shocking manner. All I'll say was it was a boarding pass when you actually printed out boarding passes back in the day.
Oh, I love it.
And it was like the smoking gun.
Yeah.
So it was a different date than he said he had arrived. And it just was like, I don't know, it was an aha moment.
Yeah.
But again, there was so much involved. And yeah, so it turned into 3 years of tiptoeing around, and I actually thought I didn't have the power to file for divorce, and financially, what would I do? And I thought I was resigned to this situation of just that was my life, just that was
Mhm.
going to be it. And 3 years later, 2019, just a number of events that I actually got the courage to file, and so
Good.
I had to do it. And by then, I was a bit of the enemy because I was very quiet during those years, apart from lovely friends like Monica. But in my world, I was pretty quiet and living this life that people didn't know what was happening. So when I filed, and I'd been jetting around the world escaping, so it probably looked to a lot of people like it was my doing. So that was hard too. But anyway, I filed and fled the country. I fled to the UK, went to the Cannes Film Festival that year with my projects. I mean, visited my son in Ireland. I was all over. And so then begins the divorce from hell. And it was really, really, really rough. And so that's 2019. So cut to that Christmas, I got my storage unit, so 4 years ago, and that was my huge big thing. So we still, even as I filed, we still were under the same roof for 6 months, and that's just torture for anybody.
You're having to go through your entire home of like 2.5 decades and go
Yes.
through memorabilia,
Yep.
things of your family, your kids, cards, letters, and then
Yes.
picking and choosing what you're going to box up and essentially
Yep.
put away when you go on this journey.
And it was less than that at that moment because I didn't know, and we'll get to it because of the pandemic. I didn't know I would never go back to the house. So that Christmas 2019, first of all, was so emotional. I knew that was the last Christmas, and I was a decorator. I did everything for Christmas, and that was brutal that year.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, I got the storage unit. I'm just taking over only my personal things. We're in the divorce. I wasn't allowed to take anything like photo albums, nothing that was quote joint.
Mhm.
So I only have a 10 by 10 to this day storage unit of my, my childhood things, my, things pre-marriage. And and then so I did that, and then after Christmas, I packed 2 suitcases and I went to the UK, Ireland, Berlin Film Festival, all of that February 2020. So I'm over there, and then it slips into March 2020, and there's rumors of this weird possible COVID thing or whatever we were calling it at the time.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I was in Scotland, and they locked down, and you guys had already been locked down, and it became
Mhm.
this panic of, do I stay or do I go? And my son's in Ireland, my daughter's LA, and I ended up getting on the last plane out of Scotland and Ireland, March 24th, 2020, came back. I have nowhere to go. My husband is locked down in the family home. And so I got my first Airbnb March 2020 and literally never lived in my house again. So I became this nomad for 4 years, and I didn't plan it. It just
Mhm.
turned into that. And I wouldn't change it, but I would never at that moment have said, I'm going to be a nomad for the next 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the divorce went on until through all the pandemic, all through 2020.
Yeah, it seems to me that with your kids get of the age where they're leaving, that seems like it'll be traumatic for me. If I
Oh, it
live,
is. It is.
yeah, and then to have this other thing, which is so fucking weird. I mean, it's just a weird vibe. It's
Extra
just weird.
layer.
Yeah, yeah. I did it. I just said right off, I'm not leaving the house. Oh, I will live in the garage. I'm not leaving the kids. I just had a feeling if I went out that door, the locks would be changed. So eventually, she moved out. Which when you talk about what's yours, what's mine. The kids and I were sitting there one day, and a moving truck full of big, and they just started taking shit out. The guys coming in, it was her, going to her, and my son, it was like, oh my god, daddy, they're stealing our stuff. I go, no, no, son, they're not stealing our stuff. It's your mom and I. We each get half of. We'll let her pick whatever she wants to get going, and just to get it going. And also, it went on, and finally, I said to my son, get your iPad, go in the back of that truck and film. They tell me what they're. I want to know what they're stealing. I mean, again, it was like that, but it's funny because the time you were in your first Airbnb, what the kids and I were in, we had to scramble. We stayed in the house till it closed, and you've got 3 days to move out. We had a
Wow.
very house in Beverly Hills,
Mhm.
and just us getting that stuff together and uh, and and uh, and stuff. And I didn't even know how to get an Airbnb. But we had to scramble, and it's funny now, but again with all the storage stuff. I mean, what I found is there's stuff that is just ridiculous that I've saved, and I think a part of it was like, well, when the kids grow up, maybe they'll play with this, and it's just not. So my kids
Right.
play with everything now. If there's something there that even if it's valuable, and I say, well, let's enjoy this thing out. You can break it. I'm sure you will,
Yeah.
but you just start traveling light.
I love that you guys had like civilized, like Tom, you had movers, Kim, you got a storage unit. My things were thrown in trash bags.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, no, let me take it down. No, she had movers. She had a big furniture. When the kids and I came, we had trouble because my credit card wouldn't work. We were trying to get some bids to just out in front of the house to get the stuff out of
Oh,
the
like one
house.
of those things that goes in the
Yeah,
driveway, the
yeah.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was looking them up. I didn't know how that worked. And then we got very lucky. Somebody we got someone to come and just our handyman and
Mm.
brought a bunch of guys over and
Aw.
just did it. And it was not, they're not professional movers. They did great. But we went from our house to our real estate agent's guest house.
Mm.
That just the amount of stuff and then, fortunately we got it together. But
Yeah.
it's you know, and life is like that sometimes. And but your ex, now he had another family.
No.
No, no, not another family. No,
Oh,
he just chose another for a while and has
yeah,
another now.
yeah,
And he just to cut ahead, yeah, he ended up keeping the family home. So he is in there. And not only did I not have the means to buy him out, but I also didn't want it after 20 years. That was no longer the family home to me. But
yeah.
he's there with his latest woman. So that's another layer of the thing, though, of there's
I just
another
find
woman
that
in the
so
family home.
shocking,
Hmm.
just on my end, that it wasn't like you had to sell it and split it. Also shocking that he would want to stay. And number three, that whoever this other person is that he's with, like, what dumb bitch would want to stay in that house? I would be so skeeved out to
Yeah.
stay in another woman's home because everyone knows, like, the
Well, my
woman
stuff's
makes
still
the
there. I mean,
home.
it is still,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can't
Yeah, it's
believe.
bizarre. It's totally
Well, I also
bizarre.
think one of the reasons you and I bonded was my mom and stepdad divorced right when I graduated college. So I was an adult, which similar to your kids, and that is a whole different can of worms
It is. It's different.
because your one or both parents may include the child in more information than they would be if they were little kids.
Oh,
And
oh
it's
yeah.
hard to hear things from both sides, and then it just becomes a lot for everyone as a family.
Hmm.
Oh, it's terrible, and it is ongoing, and that's what I'm sad about. I'm not sad whatsoever about that relationship
Right.
anymore. But for my kids, that the family of four is no more. I mean, I always joke about it. It's a table for one.
Yeah.
It's no more family of four. It's a huge change, and for holidays and stuff.
It's not unusual. It's not like, I know it feels like you're all alone going through this and you're the only one. And but it does happen in today's day and age. I want to say his ex is living in your old house. Is that no? Is
No, not
that
his
I
ex.
mean
His
it's
new
new.
my ex kept the house. Yes,
With
he
a
bought
what?
me out.
There's a woman there, and
Yes.
I'll tell you this: he's going to suffer because she's not going to like. She's eventually going to gut the house,
Oh, they've
and
changed. They've totally changed it. It's
he's
all
going to.
different.
I'm going to tell you. I'll show you something to make you feel better. See this guy? This is my cousin, who is the lead singer of the Gospel Lads, a very big. It's on my dad's side, a very big Christian group, the Gospel Lads. They turned around. He was like a celebrity to everybody. He had an exact replica of his family from Missouri in California. Like their house was the same number of kids and everything.
Wow.
He'd go on the road, he'd travel, he'd go to their death. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
up, not like that's expensive, number one, but that was a big, just as somebody do it. You hear about truckers doing this sometimes, and but it wasn't just like, okay, he cheated, he did this thing. No, he's got this other thing, and he chose his other family thing too. And he had to make a decision. Like that was a very disappointing thing for our family. This guy was like Jesus. I'm Jewish, but still Jesus. He was a star, man. And
It's
that's
always the super religious ones. They've got
yeah,
the most to hide,
yeah.
the most to be ashamed of. Well, okay, so how was it going through a divorce during COVID and you're in an Airbnb? And also, it's not like, I mean, I know you're a very creative person. You're a writer. You started your company right before, maybe.
No, that was actually no, that's funny too, because yeah, so I have Highway 101 Entertainment, and I had been screenwriting and stuff forever throughout the marriage and stuff. But no, I started that actually 6 months after all of that. So also in 2016, I was turning 50 too. Can we add that to the mix? Turning 50,
What a life
empty nest,
change.
a lovely divorce coming. And I said, I'm going to start a company. So I did that. And I've been, yeah, pursuing that ever since.
How did you not go insane during COVID, you know, and then also nothing happening in Hollywood?
I actually shockingly I had an oddly semi-fun time too. I mean, the horrible divorce was going on, but I got this Airbnb downtown Santa Barbara, ended up with a Manchester girl who was going through a divorce also, and we had just met kind of recently. And she moved in with me. We lived like the young golden girls in this Airbnb. We were the first out there to get curbside cocktails. We would, if anything opened up, we were there. We were just the wild girls. We'd have dance parties by ourselves in our place. We we had a great time. It was like having a roommate that I'd never had, and we had a ball. And I was creative. I wrote screenplays during that time, and I went to Africa during that time for 6 weeks. I mean, bizarre. I ran
Also
away.
crazy. I mean, I'm seeing Instagram videos of Kim on the back of a scooter that looks like it can barely run. She's going off and she would send me messages going like she's on a boat, you know, like
Yes,
I wasn't
many
sure if I
times.
was getting kidnapped today, but it kind of felt like it for about 2 hours and then I wasn't kidnapped.
Oh,
And
I had
where
the
was?
machete incident, machete. Oh, there's all
Oh,
kinds of stuff.
and
Yeah.
this was when you're in Africa.
Yeah, that was Africa, but that was 2020 during the pandemic when
Yeah.
my son, both my kids were graduating in 2020. The whole thing was unbelievable, university. And I couldn't see him from Ireland. You know, you couldn't come, you couldn't travel to each other. And he looked around the world, and Tanzania was the only country that that we could both go to. So we went and met in Tanzania in September 2020. And his girlfriend at the time, now fiance from Ireland, joined us. And then I was having such a ball, I stayed by myself and went to Zanzibar. We were in Zanzibar, and I stayed
And is
six
that where
weeks.
yeah, you now have a project, don't you, named after
Yes.
Meet
Yes.
Me in
Yeah,
Zanzibar?
it was Meet Me in Zanzibar. It's now changed to Meet Me in Cape Town for numerous reasons, but I've got a UK writing partner. And so many of my projects have come from this crazy journey of travel. You know,
But
I've
you're
got them in
so
all
brave. I
over.
mean, I love that your whole life gets turned upside down and you then, I mean, had you traveled a lot like this while you were married, or have you always,
Yeah. Yeah, and really in my 20s, there's no explanation for it, other than my parents took us on big road trips across America. I mean, there was no international travel or anything, but I saved up my money in high school and college and took myself on trips at 21, 22 to places like Costa Rica, which then were very remote. Nobody knew about them. And I'd go backpacking, no phones, no computers. So I always had that. And then I met my husband in Mexico. He's from Ohio, but we met on a spring break Mazatlan trip. So we met traveling. We had that in common, and we took our kids all over the world. So that was a huge perk.
okay.
Um, so we're all big travelers. So I'm really living my dream. I've always was a traveler and a writer, and I'm making that my total purpose now with second chapter Nomad.
Well, this seems like fun. This during COVID, you and that gal
Yes.
from.
That's also a movie. These two
Yeah,
women
no,
meet,
that's definitely no. That is like
right?
a.
Both going through a divorce, or it's a show, you know,
Yeah,
during the pandemic.
Oh, totally.
you're doing stuff. You know, you're out there. You take advantage of the pandemic any way you can, and
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
good way to live your life. Maybe
It,
that
it
was.
is.
Yeah. Did you feel that at the time? Going, I've never done this life, but I'm kind of digging it.
By the time I went off to Africa, absolutely. I it was the whole eat, pray, love thing. I mean, I think I
Mhm.
wasn't really praying or loving, but there was definitely eating and jumping in the sea and going on crazy boats and yeah, doing wild things. And but I felt absolutely wild and free. And I would get those same divorce things all the way in Africa, but they felt very far away, and I could just kind of read it like another person, like a character.
The information for the attorneys, the sort of the back and forth, that bullshit that goes on and on.
Oh,
Was that the kind of stuff it was?
oh yeah, it was absolutely awful. I had no idea what to experience. I remember that film A Marriage Story, thinking how awful that was, and then I'm like, oh wow, that's how it actually goes down. It's like
Hmm.
that bad. The attorneys
Hmm.
kind of egg you on, and it makes it so much worse. Yeah.
Everyone was judging you
Oh yes.
by what you were doing.
Yeah.
She's off gallivant, you know, they
Yep.
paint this picture, this terrible picture of you. And it's like, how
Yes.
dare anyone judge after all
That's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, gallivanting, that word was definitely used.
gallivanting.
That sounds like an old word.
But
An
much
old-
of it was running away at that time. My gosh, it was a pandemic and divorce and empty nest, and it was awful. So
yeah.
I know I was running away, but I also was enjoying the moment. And now I'm doing the same thing, but I'm not running away anymore. I'm realizing, wow, this is actually now it's a choice.
But that's a great revenge. So to me, is getting out there. Now, if I were in the guy spot and I'm like, well, I'm gonna, oh my God, she's living, she's living her best life, and I'm fucking, what is happening? You just, because then the man would have to look inside himself and go, okay, how was I holding that back? What about, boy, and it's the fact you've been together since you're kids, basically. This is I mean, nobody wants to get a divorce. Well, I have, but to have this other thing come out of you that may never come out, and you would have had
Yeah.
to push that down, and your best version of yourself, and so everybody was gossiping about you, huh? Well,
Well,
that's
also pandemic as well, though, because people weren't even leaving their homes, and there I am in Africa
And
and
they're like,
places.
look at this risk taker. She doesn't care.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was all of that too. Um,
How do you think divorcing later in life and with older children affected your relationship with your kids? Do you feel like you're closer because of it, or
I mean, I was the one at home, so I was always extremely close with them. But the initial divorce was awful, especially because I filed. I mean, no matter what the reasons are, when you're the one that actually does it and initiates it, it's not looked upon positively. But now we're super close, and they also understand better that I gave up the family home partly so that they still have a room, they still have their stuff, it's all there. So like, I knew I couldn't provide that. Not only could I not, but I probably would not. So they they have that. I think they understand more the sacrifices that I've made along the way for
and the
that.
fact that you had to step up. They will I mean, in the moment, it's like, well, mom's destroying everything, but as a little bit of time, they'll realize how heroic it was for you to do that, because that's not the easy way out.
No, it really wasn't. You know, it wasn't. And anyway, so I started my blog just a year ago,
No,
second chapter Nomad. And it took me a long, long, long time because literally I kept so much of it secretive. And so to be talking about it publicly, even this, if you had told me I would speak about this, I
yeah,
I wouldn't have believed it.
yeah.
But now I feel like I can help so many people and inspire people and motivate them in whatever their second chapter is, of doing something positive and enjoying the moment no matter what. And I'm having women reach out to me on this blog and my Instagram and stuff of like, wow, I can do something too. Or, oh, some have said it about their own mothers or something. So I'm feeling this need to share, and especially with people of my age and older.
Mhm. Well, it's a great thing. Do your kids ever read it, or your ex?
I don't know about him because he was always anti-social media, thank goodness. But no, my kids are definitely aware of it, and I'm certainly cognizant of that, just as
Yep.
you are with divorce papers. Every word I put out there, I know, people I know are going to read it,
Yeah.
including my kids. So I'm very aware of that, and they're supportive though. My daughter helped me come up with second chapter Nomad name when I was trying to think of it, so they're supportive.
Well, you could also tell the truth because it is documented. Like, it's not. I think that people get into a situation where the person, and they were the person that cheated or whatever. They're like, hey, please don't. I'm gonna call the police if you tell them what really happened. But the one advantage to having everything documented is it's in writing, and the more you share about your humiliation, your uncertainty, your shame, and the more you share honestly with people, especially with women,
Absolutely.
they back to it. So you got to
Yep.
put
And
yourself
you
out.
nailed it. All those words. Check, check, check.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if it was just you, I got my shit together. I just want everybody to know I am killing it. But to get people to, as you know, you got to say, this is what happened. This is what my experience, whatever. And they're like, holy shit. because there are a lot of people, men and women, sitting at home right now, uh, thinking, what should I do? I can't. I don't have the ability to do this thing
Exactly.
that I need to do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that you could give them strength and hope and guide them a little better. So because you weren't there for you, and then you kind of got to say, here's my mistakes, and here's what not to do, in my opinion. I think that's great. That's another thing I've learned from this podcast. So people, there's divorce. Monica, what are they called? Where they like coaches?
Yeah. Divorce coaches, we didn't, even for you, Kim, I don't think in 2016 that was a thing, or hadn't
I could have used
in
one for
LA
sure.
heard about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you have some advice or words of wisdom, especially, like for empty nesters,
Well, I do for that, but I also, another thing is for young women, I'm really open about that, about all the, not mistakes, it was the time, but I was not prepared to, in my 50s, suddenly be, thrown out and have to be totally independent
Mhm.
financially, even though I had a career. I was a teacher, I'm educated, but I didn't teach since I was in my 20s. And, I'm getting court papers saying, well, you can go be a substitute teacher during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like that's what you can do because you're not deserving of alimony and and things like that. So I'm really telling young people, young women to just, even when you get married, just still take care of yourself, know about finances, know how to deal with everything.
Yeah, but when they say you're not deserving alimony, well, that's bullshit. And did you were you able to figure
Well,
that out?
no, how I figured that out is I was so after 3 years separation and a year and a half of the legal proceedings, as you can understand, I actually surrendered. And after Africa, when I'm just like zinning out, and then I also then went to Mexico for a while. Um, I couldn't do it anymore, and so I surrendered and I walked away and I took no alimony, which is obviously my attorney, my family, everyone's like, what? And I'm suffering for it now, 4 years later, financially, but it gave me freedom. I keep saying it's the price of freedom. I
Like in
didn't
the
have to
sense
turn
it
in any
ended
more
the,
bank statements.
so you're saying you basically forfeit fight for that just to end it, just to be like, I'm done.
Yep,
Where's
I'm
everyone?
done.
Leave me
Yep,
alone.
yep. Because it was going to go on and on and on.
Well, my first
Yep.
wife was rich. My first wife was rich. We had no prenup, and I could have gotten $50 million because of the Roseanne show. I owned half, but I said, you know what? I'm a man. I'm doing. I'm doing a movie on the stupids. I don't need. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to. And I've regretted it every day since. But you do that. You do go. What is money for this anxiety and all this stuff? I
Exactly.
quit putting their mouth on the glass there. Okay, that's you made it hard.
But
No, I was getting actual panic attacks. I'd never had them in my life, panic attacks over these things. And I'm going like, this is destroying me. Like, I'm not going to do this.
What to describe one of your panic attacks?
yeah.
Oh my God, the one in particular, literally with my roommate at the time, it was I had gone to my storage unit, which at that point was a trigger. Now it's a positive place, but at that time it freaked me out. And then I had to go to the family home. I still had to go over there to constantly collect things. And I did that, and that ran into, ex during the divorce proceedings. And I was driving, and I'm not kidding, my whole body started to freeze, like completely freeze. I made it back to the place, but I couldn't even get out of the car. I couldn't unclench my hands. And she had to come, and she's like, what in the world? And it was so bad that I'm like, I'm not going through this anymore. And so I don't regret
Physical torture.
Yeah, but
physical. Yeah.
did your friend go with you when you went over there?
No, that particular time I went alone. There were times she did go with me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. You
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
That's some advice I give
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. No, that's very good advice. And she did later. Um, but funny thing, I had one of those start to come again recently because it never ends because my son and his fiance, long story, but they were living in the house there with my ex for the last year, and I would have to still drive over there when I'm visiting my hometown,
Mhm.
and like pick up my his girlfriend, and there was a time it triggered me just seeing the house again that I'm
Yeah,
not in and someone else is. It was just awful. So it's still there, those triggers.
Yeah. Are you? Does it still trigger you? The
That
house
that
stuff?
one happened just months ago. Yeah.
Oh, did?
Yeah.
Yeah. We my kids will say, Daddy, let's go by our old good house."
Oh, oh.
Everybody else, I go, I don't know if we want it, but I go, okay, well, let's go look at it. And they're looking at it. They go, do you think they'd let us in? And I'm like, no,
Oh,
no, that's over. But my thing is, okay, I need to, when these things are triggering me, I need to deal with them. And like my personality, I'll put stuff up. I'll put stuff up, and then I'll be walking around like, why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? And and then I'll say, and then I'll try to figure out one thing I can do about it, or one thing don't want to face. And then I'll sit there, read it, face it, and then okay, then let's get to the next thing. But man, a lot of people, and I get it. Starts going down. You're like, I don't want any, and it puts you in a like, super vulnerable position because you're deciding, well, do I want my mental health or do I want to stay on top of this financial stuff? But life is short. You're right. You make a decision, which is my last one. I was asked for a divorce so many times and told I hate you so many times. Like at first, you're like, okay, well, let's be cool. Let's sell the house or something. Let's be civil. Let's whatever. And then it just kept going. I realized she's not going to file for divorce. She's not like my lawyer. Oh no, this is part of a plan to stay longer together for whatever reason. Financial, I go, and I had to do it. And I did it. And I wrote a real nice thing. Hey, we've grown apart. We had, kids are great. And she flipped out because that was, but I had to do that. Like a
That's
lot
really
of
hard, very
it's
difficult.
hard. Well, the actual act was pretty. I just sat there realizing, okay, I've done everything humanly possible. I have to do this one thing, and it was very, it was liberating. I mean, I think when you get the final, and even in this case, when the final divorce paper, you're sitting there at the judge or whatever court, and you're cited. It did it. I didn't have that feeling like, oh, okay, I've failed. I was like, okay, let's sign this stuff right now. And sometimes you have that, and sometimes you have a lot of regrets. I see movies where they get the divorce papers and they're crying together and signing them together.
Oh, no,
And
no,
that,
no, no, and
Now,
oh my
was
God.
there like an immediate shift in you when you signed the papers, or was it kind of a gradual, like subconscious, like it must have been
It was pretty immediate, and it was Christmas Eve 2020. It was still 2020, and so it happened pretty quickly after I said that I surrender, and signing it. I have photos that's on my blog actually of me in the attorney's office in this pretty red top because it's Christmas Eve. She bought a bottle of champagne. I've got my champagne glass,
oh,
and
Aw.
good.
signed it, and it was fantastic. And I went back even with my kids and my parents and everyone, and it was like just such a relief was a word.
So we're gonna have to plan your epic official divorce party, or did you have one?
I think my life has been a divorce party ever
Yeah,
since with
yeah.
this travel. Even after that, I went, I've been traveling with a companion for some years, and we met in Mexico. We didn't meet in Mexico, but the whole thing, we had to go to Mexico for a while. So
Yeah.
right after that, I lived in Mexico for 3 months, just checked out, but just like, okay, that's it. So Mexico.
Man, were you hooking up with dudes? Have you started?
Well,
When did you start hooking up?
she
Yeah,
just said
I
she
just said
has a travel
companion.
companion.
I have a
I know that.
travel companion.
A companion.
I have a travel companion. So no,
So
no,
that's
Tom.
gotta be fun. It's gotta be
It is
fun.
fun, and it's nice having companionship, especially with some of these crazy travels. Yeah.
Yeah. And are your kids aware that you have a?
Yes. Yes. My poor kids, they have to deal with that, and then this other woman in their family
Yeah.
home, there's
Well,
a
no
lot there's a
family's
lot to deal with.
perfect.
Mm,
It's interesting
yeah.
to say the least. But yeah, no, I've literally been traveling ever since. I also being from California, I mean, what do you do? Going from a nice family home to, oh, let me go rent this little apartment, and
Yeah.
I don't know. And my kids are all over. There's no one place I even want to be, and so I like that I can go visit them wherever they are and pursue all my projects. which are all over the world. I'm in London a lot. I'll be going there in March again.
Yeah. Well, it certainly made you more creative. So really, it was all worth it. All the bullshit for you to be able to write stuff, for you to be able to
Yes.
be creative. And people are like, boy, I can't. I'm not being creative. My life has just stayed this thing, and then you had this experience, which is horrible. But and what we really just want to be creative. And sometimes in these marriages, you lose your fucking creativity, man. I felt that being drained out of me, just beaten down, you know, of me. And because from day one, it's always like, you're bad, good guy, bad guy. And I'd accept that I'm the bad guy, I accept that. But then it just sucks the, that's just all. And also for me, in front of my kids, you don't want to. I want my kids to be a good relationship. So I don't want them to think, oh, that's how it is. Somebody comes yelling and threatening, and then they
Yeah.
leave, and very manipulative. And so, but as Monica knows, I had one date fairly recently, first in 7 years,
Oh.
and
Oh, wow.
met her. I was down doing a movie and down at Tampa, and she came up. She said, "I'm a huge fan," and we talked a little bit. I was one of those Comic Cons too, and said, very cute, and said, I have two kids, two young kids. I'm like, check, that box checks. And I'm sober 5 years. I go, that checks. That checks. And and then I said, I never, my assistant is young, and she goes, how old was she? I go, I never really asked that. I mean, she got two kids in her own business, so she got,
Hard to tell how old people are nowadays.
yeah.
Mhm.
To be fair.
She is half my age, but I'm 64. She's 32. And then I didn't have time to. She said, "Let's go to coffee or let's do." And I was a bit too busy, but I exchanged numbers, and then she started sending me some pictures that were kind of amazing. I never had that experience.
Wow,
And
Tom, this is quite an
No,
experience.
Tom missed that whole phase, but whatever, so did we. So we have no idea.
so I was hoping she didn't want return pictures of that nature because those are disgusting. But then she flew up to Buffalo. I was doing stand up at a casino at the end of December. She flew up there on her own, brought a friend, bought tickets right in the front row, told me she was coming, and then you know what?
Bob's your uncle.
We went out. We all went out to dinner, and I was like, I am going to have you come up to the room. that's I haven't done. It's so uncomfortable, and I was like, I'm not taking my.
But I'm proud of you. You did it.
But my son saw. I think he got it by phone and saw a couple of.
Gotta change your code.
Yeah, and
Jesus.
he was so upset, and so we had to have a long talk. Why are you upset? You think I'm leaving you? I'm not leaving you. You're my number one. And I'd had some health issues too, so it's been a little scary for the kids. But
Yeah.
he really, really. I mean, he locked himself in the bathroom. When Monica and I were doing the podcast, I come out. Rosa, who was with the kids here, and my daughter's like, Jackson's locked in the bathroom crying, and I was like,
Oh, no.
what? He's been there for an hour. I go, what? And then I could hear him crying, but he was crying loud enough that I would hear it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you kind of tell. And so he wouldn't let me in. And he told me what he was upset about. I said, I love you. He said, you got to let me in. We don't lock the doors here. I'm getting a screwdriver. And he goes, well, I did something in here. I go, oh, it's fine. What'd you do? I cut up your shower curtain. I go, oh, okay. Okay. Well, all right. Well, that's not good, but let's, and then he goes, I did a few other things. Like I used this cover up and he squeezed the whole thing out. He squeezed the whole thing of my soap out. He took down, my daughter writes little notes. I put him on. He took note. He was like, what does he care about the most? That's what I'm going to destroy right now. He sprayed a whole can of deodorant out the window and all replaceable. And
A lot of big feelings were had.
Yeah. I mean, then I was watching a Dateline episode where a kid was like jealous or something, and they had it's kids who kill their parents. There's a whole series of those,
Oh, dear.
and it seemed like similar behavior. But I, he told me he was straight up about why he was sad about it or worried about it, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, she lives in Tampa, man. Let's And then I also learned you could hide pictures on your phone. When someone sends you a picture, you can hit hide.
Mom's learning all new skills.
Yeah, and that's what I do with the shit from their mom too. I hide all of it. I hide this is horrible. In fact, my assistant, because we don't want the kids to hear anything negative about their mom, so we call her Biden. And my assistant wrote a thing text. She's young, she's a comedian, and she's like, "You can't believe what that cunt Biden did today." And I always tell the kids, "Don't look at stuff." They go, my son's like, "What do you got against Joe Biden?" He had read
Can't
that.
tell them not
I
to
go,
look.
"Don't look at that stuff. I love Joe Biden. It's a joke." So you got to be, but at a certain point for parenting, things are going to come up. And you have to deal with it. The buck stops here. I don't blame the other person there or the school or the whatever, but it's my responsibility. And as you know, as a mother, I don't know if young girls are like they are, but young boys, it seems like my son has less interest. He's never mentioned him or his friends have never mentioned a girl. My daughter, who's 8, has had his crushes and boyfriends and this and her friends, and
Well, I
so
also think it's hard when your kids realize or you have to explain to them like you're just human and that you
yeah,
may want companionship or whatever one day because they are the little tiny narcissists in our lives that we give
yeah,
so much attention to. And Kim, I'm just curious, you said your son is engaged and
Yes.
your daughter is, I'm wondering, what do you think, how he feels about marriage? Is he having seen what you guys have gone through? And then what does your daughter think about, is she kind of one of those maybe anti or I don't know,
I think it's the generation
how
too.
has it affected them? Yeah. And in their generation.
Yeah. Well, my son, yeah, he's had this same girlfriend went from his 6 years in Ireland, so that's exciting, and I adore her, so that's great. And
she's
yeah, he got
Irish.
engaged.
She's Irish.
She is Irish, but
Oh,
he went over to school. He did a semester abroad and basically never came back for 6 years. And anyway, but so he is apparently following the traditional path. So I'm pleased, and they're great together and stuff. So I'm very optimistic for them. My daughter is 25. She's in the film world here in LA, and so definitely would be more jaded, I would say in general. But part of it's from the divorce, no doubt. She lived through it much more than he did because she was still in the house, and I probably did overshare far too much with her. We talked about that now. Um, so that's something I would certainly warn people against doing. Being a little more
But also
careful.
maybe you're oversharing, even though inappropriate, maybe at times. I wonder if you're also doing her a service by lifting the veil of, like, hey, keep your own finances,
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
No, that part of the things I definitely am open and very open about now in general to her and her friends and that whole generation.
your kids, my kids. There's been a couple times when their mom's always through them. Like, oh, I'd like him to come over and pick up whatever, come up to the thing, and I go, well, I'll always do that for you guys. And then why don't we invite mom over? By the way, she's invited anytime she wants to come. But I said, I go, well, your mom and I, it's different. Like she loves you, you love her. And my son will joke, mom hates dad. Okay, Quinn. And she said, now Quinn says that. I go, yeah, that's what it is.
But
I really shouldn't be around people that hate me that much. It's not good
Hmm.
for my self-esteem.
It's not healthy.
It's
Yeah.
not healthy. Yeah. So that makes it a little easier. They have an idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I've made a big effort now to be, I mean, my ex and I are cordial, and we'll talk about anything that relates to the kids and
Well, that's a good place to be. That's
financial or yeah, and we are.
good.
So
That's good. I tell you, I fake being cool. I had my ex-mother-in-law invite her over here like Christmas to see the stuff the kids got and built and all the Christmas trees out front. I sort of walked her around. She's older and showed her. I was looking at my ex that's standing frozen at the door. But yeah, I always believed and I assumed that one day we would be cordial, or even in our first divorce the agreement thing. I said, well, how about, it was always about, I need to get a hold of you 24/7. I need this. And I said, how about we take 5 minutes a day and talk about the kids, like good things about the
Yeah,
kids. And just
that's
not,
reasonable.
there's nothing I can say good that just gets thrown back. Oh, it's terrible. And I've always felt that's a weird character thing. That's something if I'd have known that it's never going to be just chill for a second and let's kind of enjoy these kids for a second and what they're up to and their fun little things, but then I find somebody else to talk about. And by the way, when you're my age and your kids are this age, not you, my friends that are my age want no fucking part of it. They're either, maybe they have kids that age of, they've had a third family, but they just don't, they aren't, I'm pretty raptured by the stuff and chit chat, this stuff. And it's hard to find people listen to you when so,
Yeah, how did it work out with your, friendships that you had with people as a couple? Did you have to get all new friends, Kim, or did you, how did that?
It's a mix. Again, it was also the pandemic at the same time, so there were so many, and empty nests. So there were so many changing factors. A lot of the friendships were, going in different directions anyway. As you had your mommy friends, and you have different ones along the way. But definitely some couple friends, and I said lost them, but I don't think I lost them anymore. I don't. I
no,
don't
you
need
don't.
them.
Fuck those people. Fuck them.
But I have a lot of great new friends, and I would say most are divorced, not all, but a lot. I mean, clearly it's what you have in common at this point. And either they never, I have a lot that didn't have children, I think, because I'm just in the place where being empty nest, I'm alone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of new great friends and all over the world. So it's a great new group.
And Monica was a unicorn because she was the first person that got divorced in her group.
Yeah.
And
And it's so funny because not many of my friends are married and ever even been married. And I don't know if that's psychologically by design, the people that I choose. And most of them don't have kids. So it was a weird,
Yeah,
but I mean, I guess the benefit of that is my daughter has a lot of really great aunties and
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that. But yeah, I
Mhm.
don't.
it's kids need a cool aunt, uncle,
Yeah.
people that are not a parent, that don't have to go by the same, that just want to be and are fun.
Just want to know you. Yeah.
For my childhood, my aunt and uncles were like fucking so cool. My dad was not cool. He was just worked, very conservative, but my aunt and uncle were bananas, and it was so cool that they would take an interest in me.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and Kim, you have some young, is it nieces? Two
All nieces, yeah, all nieces. And I'm so close with them, and
that
I
are
love
still
that.
little, so you kind of get to enjoy that
Yes.
time again
Yeah,
through.
yeah. The little ones go down to 8 years old, so that's fun.
yeah.
And then
What
the
about
oldest, yeah. Oh,
his family? You married? How did that go down with them?
that was the end. That was the end after 20 plus years. Done.
Mhm.
Done.
No
Yeah.
contact.
That's for the
Nope.
best. That's for the
Nope.
best. They don't
And
deserve
it
you.
is.
They
It
don't
it is.
deserve.
It is. Yeah. So that's that. I have a lot of his extended family and friends actually still on Facebook and stuff, which is interesting. And
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's
I've never, ever, ever. It's another. My personal opinion is I never speak poorly. I never said anything
Right. Of
negative, like on social media or anything. I've
course.
been very careful with all that. So
yeah.
So
yeah.
what is
But
next for second chapter Nomad? What can we look forward to hearing about, and how
Well,
how
I'm
can people
yeah.
find you and reach out?
Yeah, so I've got Second Chapter Nomad Instagram, which is I have a lot of fun with that. And then, like I said, I started the blog a year ago, February, in Jamaica on one of my adventures, and it took a lot of courage to start that. Instagram's one thing, but an actual blog. And
Mhm.
I'm a big journaler, so I have extensive journals from this entire time. So I've edited them for public consumption, and that's a big part of the blog. So I'll go back and revisit those journals, add
Mhm.
photos, and so I've documented the whole thing under second chapters, the whole divorce, all of that business. But then I also have a nomad life section of just all the crazy tips of living out of storage and suitcases for 4 years,
Yeah.
and then the travel adventures section of all the, and then it's with a huge travel side too. So those are the three headings of my blog, and I'm just really passionate about it.
I'm trying to find a bigger suitcase, a hard shell. You know how you put shit in it. And according to Amazon, the biggest one they have is 30 inches. Now I know 22 inches you can check into the, but 30 inches doesn't seem. I want one that's this big.
Okay,
Where do you?
but no. This is where you got to ask the travel advice because then
Okay,
it's going to
yes.
weigh too much. You're better to have two suitcases than that one big one. It'll weigh way too much, and then you've got to pay like now they get up to like $150 to pay for to be
For a
overweight.
heavy bag
So
fee.
Oh yeah.
yeah, and there's no way it won't be if it's a huge bag. So
Give us like 2 or 3 of your favorite travel tips for traveling alone or just in general.
again, you'll see on my Instagram all the time. I'm posting visually because I don't take a lot, but I have special things. I have these little rocks and that have like dream and all these words on them that I put out everywhere. I have candles. Even now, I've got a candle lit.
Love it.
Um, just a pile of my favorite books of the moment, my journals. Just not a big amount of stuff, but I put it out immediately, even if it's one night in a place, and it just
Yeah.
feels like home.
And do you feel
So
like you
that's
travel
fun.
pretty light now? Like, are you a carry-on only or no?
Oh,
The face says
no,
no.
no. People do make fun of me, but I'll go to London, for a month and then I stay 5 months or something. So I have to take at least two suitcases and a big carry-on. And I do like real books, so I take like actual books and stuff. No, I'm not a backpacker anymore. Like those days are long gone.
Mhm. Well,
We
I
need
take
our
I take
product.
one of my daughter's buddies, her duplicate buddy,
Aw.
buddy is the thing, and I put it out there, and just like when I'm looking around the room, out of the corner of my eye, I'll see that or this thing my son did. Okay, that kind of calms me down. When you write, are you writing on a laptop? How are you do write? What's your process there?
Yeah, on the laptop, although I'm still a visual person, like even this, I didn't mean to, but I jotted some notes
No,
on
I
a
like
piece of
that. I like
paper.
that.
I'm very much visual writing things too. So I do a lot of that. But then I have a full journal on my computer as well, and then screenplays and the blog. It's all over my desktop. And
And you keep all the handwritten stuff and you condense it and put it in, particularly if you're writing a script or something, you keep all this stuff and so you can see it when
yeah,
you finally get to script
yeah,
board or whatever.
yep,
They
yeah. And I like to see colors. I have a lot of colored markers and pins. I don't know, I think I remember things better. Very visual. And and then the other thing about travel, yeah, Monica, is writing. I love a place like with a window. This isn't it here, but with just a window, and I sit there and look out. I spent 10 weeks in New York City this summer, and I just was so inspired getting to sit there in this, it may have been a tiny little place, but looking out at the
Yeah.
city.
Will you like move the furniture around a little bit, like move the desk if you know you're gonna be there for a while?
Oh yeah, especially to get some little nook by a window to
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
And do you have any sort of like regimen where you're like, okay, I'm setting a timer and I'm writing for 45 minutes, or it's just only when it kind of takes you?
No, I do have to I have to make myself sit down and do something because once I get going, it's great, but I'm a huge procrastinator otherwise. So, and the other thing with travel is I love to work in hotel lobbies and stuff where you just take the project at hand that you need to do. Like last night, I needed to read a script. So I just took the computer. I'm like, you're going to read this script and you can't leave the lobby until you read it. Stuff like that. So I do have to put, whether it's time or a deadline of a project, I have to
Yeah.
Mhm.
do that.
Makes sense. All right. All right. You're living the dream.
Side note, I finally went on my first trip recently with just a carry-on because my friends always make fun of me that I bring, even for 2 nights, like to Vegas, I bring the giant suitcase, but then I'm always the one that has extra shoes or bag if someone wants to borrow. But I really felt like a sassy flight attendant. I was like, oh my God, I have this tiny suitcase and that's it. And I brought only my favorite things. And then my bag got lost because they made me check it on the way back. So I don't know if I'm gonna
Oh
like
no.
keep doing
Mm.
that, but it was an
Mm.
experience.
Yeah, I like to be prepared. And again, because everything's in storage, I tell people that too. When I take my suitcases, that's what I've got. There's no closet back home. I mean,
I love that you bring your daughter's bunny and it's like a grounding and it kind
yeah.
of reminds you of home. Is there anything else that you always have to bring with you on the road, like a certain something that you're like, that's always going in?
I used to bring Astroglide, and
Of
but
course.
then this seems like too much work.
That
But
seems dangerous nowadays.
do you take your personal thing when you go in there? Your personal
No.
I did notice that one lady that came up and to Buffalo had her little personal thing, which I
Well,
felt that's a good idea
I
because,
think that's because she knew she was going to have a rendezvous.
well, yeah, no, but I think also just for the time, I feel, and I told Monica when I got back, I think I need to get Viagra or something because it seemed like she was doing too much work and I felt bad for her. And I got to, because you think you're in the groove and you haven't had, you made love for 7 years and it's not the same, it turns out. It's not the
Yeah.
pressure, man.
Kim, you're the best. Thank you for
Oh, you are
an
welcome.
hour with us.
Divorce party. Divorce